The United Nations was founded in 1945 with the noble aim of promoting international peace, security, human rights, and cooperation among nations. However, over the years, the UN has faced mounting criticism for its ineffectiveness, particularly in its peacekeeping efforts and its failure to uphold its own core principles. While the UN continues to play a role in global diplomacy, its shortcomings have contributed to negative consequences in areas such as conflict resolution, human rights protection, and global inequality. Moreover, the persistent issue of sexual abuse and misconduct by UN peacekeepers has further eroded the organization's credibility and undermined its moral authority. Inefficiency in addressing global conflicts. One of the UN's primary goals is to prevent conflicts and mediate disputes to ensure international peace. However, its record in preventing wars, protecting civilians, and resolving long-standing conflicts has been inconsistent at best. Despite the establishment of peacekeeping missions in areas such as Rwanda, Bosnia, and Sudan, the UN has been criticized for failing to prevent or stop violent conflicts. In the case of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, for example, UN peacekeepers were present in the country, yet they were unable to intervene effectively to prevent the massacre of approximately 800,000 Tutsis. Similarly, during the Bosnian War, the UN was criticized for its failure to stop ethnic cleansing and mass atrocities, despite the presence of peacekeeping troops. These instances highlight the limits of the UN's peacekeeping capacity, which is often constrained by bureaucratic red tape, lack of adequate resources, and the political interests of the major powers within the UN Security Council. The UN's failure to take decisive action in these situations has resulted in widespread suffering and a loss of credibility for the organization. Another fundamental flaw of the UN is the disproportionate influence wielded by its most powerful member states. The structure of the Security Council grants veto power to the 5 permanent members: the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, China, and France. This system has often led to deadlock and inaction, especially when the interests of these powerful nations conflict. For example, the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003 was widely condemned by many members of the international community, but the Security Council could not prevent the war due to the veto power held by the United States. Similarly, the UN has been criticized for its inability to hold powerful countries accountable for human rights violations, such as those committed by Israel in Palestine or Russia in Chechnya and Ukraine. The political maneuvering and self-interests of these permanent members undermine the UN's ability to serve as an impartial mediator and to act in the best interests of the global community. The UN has also struggled to effectively address global inequality, both within and between nations. Although the organization has launched several initiatives, such as the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, these efforts have not fully succeeded in tackling the root causes of poverty and inequality. Many development programs have been hindered by insufficient funding, political resistance from powerful countries, and the failure to implement necessary reforms at the international level, which are key drivers of inequality. In many cases, the policies promoted by UN agencies like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank have been criticized for exacerbating poverty and widening the wealth gap, particularly in developing countries. The persistence of widespread inequality contributes to instability, social unrest, and conflicts, thus undermining the UN's broader objectives of peace and security. Sexual abuse and exploitation by UN peacekeepers. Perhaps one of the most damaging issues facing the United Nations is the pervasive problem of sexual abuse and exploitation by its peacekeeping forces. Since the early 1990s, There have been numerous reports of UN peacekeepers committing sexual violence, including rape, sexual slavery, and exploitation, in conflict zones where they were supposed to protect civilians. In countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti, and Sudan, UN peacekeepers have been implicated in widespread sexual abuse of vulnerable women and children. In Haiti, for example, peacekeepers from Uruguay and Nepal were found to have engaged in sexual exploitation and abuse of local women, some of whom were living in desperate conditions in post-earthquake Haiti. The sexual abuse of minors by peacekeepers has been particularly shocking, as these individuals were entrusted with maintaining order and security in volatile environments. The United Nations has been slow to address these allegations, and its response has often been inadequate. This systemic abuse has caused irreparable harm to the communities affected, exacerbating existing trauma and contributing to the cycle of violence. The failure to effectively address sexual abuse within the peacekeeping forces has had a profound impact on the UN's credibility. The United Nations' failure to live up to its core principles has had a detrimental impact on global diplomacy and international trust. Many countries, especially those in the Global South, view the UN as an institution that serves the interests of powerful states rather than the collective needs of all nations. This perception has led to a growing skepticism about the UN's ability to effectively manage global challenges.